Hello and welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Show. I am your host, Jay Jones. Black Entrepreneur Blueprint was created specifically to educate and inspire Black entrepreneurs to launch, build, and grow successful businesses. Join us as we help build an economic power base in the Black community by promoting business ownership. If you are currently an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur, we invite you to join us every week here at Black Entrepreneur Blueprint.
Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, episode number 277. I'm your host, Jay Jones, and today, family, we have an outstanding show. Make sure you get your pen and your paper. Today's show topic, family, is commentary on Byron Allen's recent interview on The Breakfast Club. Commentary on Byron Allen's recent interview on The Breakfast Club. Now, before we get to today's episode, I just want to share a couple things with the BEB family. First and foremost, I want to welcome all first-time listeners to Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Welcome to the BEB family, and please stick around until the end of today's broadcast, and I'm going to give you all of my social media contact information and also resources, such as my book and several other e-commerce platforms that we can use to circulate dollars in the Black community. All right, family, in today's episode, please, if you're serious about entrepreneurship, grab yourself a pencil and a piece of paper or whatever, because Byron Allen drops so many different jewels on this show. And this is one of the pound for pound best interviews I have ever heard. Now, if you're not familiar with Byron Allen, he is a media mogul. Now, he doesn't get the attention that Oprah or Tyler Perry does, but he owns the Weather Channel and various other media entities. And he started out, which is such an amazing story, he started out from his kitchen table in 1993 trying to build his business. So we're going to hear his entrepreneurial story today. And I want you guys to really listen to what it takes to be successful as an entrepreneur. Now, after the interview on The Breakfast Club, which we're going to listen to, I'm going to do some commentary on that. And then before we close on that, I'm going to give you guys all my social media contact information and resources. So let's get ready for Byron Allen on The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are The Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes, indeed.
Byron Allen. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. No. I'm a big fan. You do amazing work, and I really appreciate you so much. So it's an honor to be here.
Who is Byron Allen for people who may not be familiar?
Who is Byron Allen? That's a great question. I'm trying to figure that out myself. You know what? I'm really blessed in so many ways.
Don't make me pull up your celebrity net worth to let people know exactly how blessed you are.
You know what? Those blessings, when I think about how great America is when I think about just my simple story. Mm-hmm. My mother got pregnant with me when she was 16 years old.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And she had me 17 days after her 17th birthday.
Wow.
So in Michigan, right? Detroit?
In Detroit, Michigan. Mm-hmm. So here I am, born April 22nd, 1961, a little black baby, born without civil rights. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't bet on that baby, and you wouldn't bet on that 17-year-old little girl. Mm-hmm. And I was just fortunate, to have such a great mother. And the Detroit riots came about when Martin Luther King was assassinated. Mm-hmm. I was 7 years old. I was playing in the streets, and I'll never forget the moment they killed him. And my mother and my grandmother, they just screamed like I've never seen them scream before. They killed him. They killed him. And within 5 minutes, I was looking down the barrel of a tank. Next thing I know, troops were walking on the lawn, bayonets, dogs, and the military took over our neighborhood.
Was that to prevent any riots from happening?
That was just to squash the riots, because
Wow.
they knew they were going to kick off. Over 100-watt riots kicked off when they assassinated Martin Luther King. And they went in there and they just were in place and squashed it. And it was basically, if you are on the streets after dark, we're going to shoot you. We're going to kill you. And no questions asked. Curfew. Boom. So my mother and I decided to go to L.A. and visit some family in summer of 68 and some friends. And 2-week vacation. And ended up staying. And slept on a lot of sofas, a lot of floors, and good grace of God, just kind of sofa surfed for a while. And my mother ended up getting into UCLA. And she went to UCLA and got her master's degree in cinema TV production.
Oh, wow. So it's in your blood.
And so that was, I'll be the first to say, if the mothers succeed, so will the children. And if the mothers fail, most likely, so will the children. So because my mother was at UCLA and getting her master's degree in cinema TV production, she went to NBC and said, can I get a job? And they said no. And her persistence really paid off. She asked a very important question. She asked a question that changed our lives. She asked, do you have an internship? And they said no. And then she went to the next question. Will you start one with me? And they said yes.
Wow.
Game changer. And my mom ended up being an intern at NBC and then later a tour guide. And then later she went on to become a publicist in the marketing department at NBC. And because she was a tour guide and we couldn't afford childcare, I would go out to NBC with her and I would sit and wait for her to get off work and I would just watch Johnny Carson do The Tonight Show.
Wow.
And I watched Red Fox do Sanford and Son and Flip Wilson do The Flip Wilson Show and Richard Pryor do his specials and Freddie Prinze do Chico and the Man. And then I would go and watch an unknown sportscaster do the local news, Bryant Gumbo. And then I watched an unknown weatherman do the weather, Pat Sajak, before the Today Show and before Wheel of Fortune. And I just went from studio to studio to studio, and I thought, what a wonderful way to go through life, making people laugh, making television, and entertaining the world. And this is what I'm going to do with my life. And all of that is because of education. My mother getting in there and opening that door, and that's amazing, you know, it changes it just changes the paradigm instantly.
I wonder what inspired her to want to go to school.
You know what? She always knew education was the way, and she said, let's go. And before that, you know, we were in Detroit, and my daddy worked at Ford Motor Company a little over 30 years, and my granddaddy worked at Great Lakes Steel a little over 30 years. And these were just unbelievable men, right? Never called in a day sick, ever. Got to work. My granddaddy got to work an hour early every day and taught himself how to read and drank bad coffee every day and didn't even know it. And these guys were trying to figure out how to put 36 hours in a 24-hour day. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to the factory with them. And it was just a game changer to see how television was made. So I started doing stand-up comedy when I was about 13, 14 years old.
That's how I got first introduced to you as a comedian.
Yeah. I started when I was a kid because of watching Red Fox and Johnny Carson and all of these comedians. And I said, you know what, I'm going to start doing stand-up. And I went to the Comedy Store and I did my routine. And a guy saw me, a terrific guy named Wayne Klein. He saw me and he said, who wrote those jokes? And I said, I did. He said, I know somebody who might be interested in writing with you. I said, all right. Gave him my phone number. And I got a call like a week or two later. And this guy calls me up. He goes, let me speak to Byron.
J.J. Walker.
There it is. I go, this is Byron. He goes, this Byron. I go, yeah. He goes, my man Wayne Klein says you're funny. So if my man Wayne Klein says you're funny, you must be funny. I said, oh, thank you. He goes, you want to come write some jokes with us? I go, all right, let me ask my mom. And he was like, oh, he's got to ask his mom. So I started writing jokes with Jimmy J.J. Walker. I went to his apartment. I was 14 years old. And in his living room.
What kind of apartment did he have? Did it look like the Good Times apartment, or was he making money?
He was making money.
Okay.
He was hotter than the sun. He was on Good Times #1 show. He was lighting it up. And I go into his apartment. Sitting there is David Letterman, who had just driven out from Indianapolis in a red pickup truck because he didn't think he was going to make it and he wanted to drive home. And Jay Leno, who was sleeping in his car.
Wow.
And they were getting $200 a week, and I got $25 a joke.
$25 a joke to write.
Yeah, so I sold my joke. I sold a joke to him. Mothers say the craziest things. This milk smells sour. Here, taste it. Boom. That was it. $25. And I was able to quit my paper route. And that was great because I was throwing the Herald Examiner, and I had to throw 2 newspapers to make a penny. And so I thought, okay, I've made it. And I started doing stand-up and kept doing stand-up and kept writing. And I was really fortunate. I ended up being the youngest comedian on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And that went really well. And I remember standing behind the curtain. And I said, all right, the next 5 minutes here after he introduces me will change my life forever. Mm-hmm. And it went well. And I got a number of offers. And one of them was Real People, which ended up being the granddaddy of reality shows. Mm-hmm. And so Real People was amazing because it took me all over the country. And I was able to see America. And I mean small town America where you don't have stoplights. And it's, population 300 people. So that's how I got into the business. But before that, it was tough. I mean, it was, with a single mother. And there was talk about her not being able to afford me, not being able to keep me because things were tough. Money was really tight. And that clicked with me as a kid. So I started figuring out how to make money early on because my mother and father had gotten a divorce. And I felt like I pretty much lost my father in that divorce. And I wasn't about to lose my mother. So I said, I'm not going to let money be the reason why they say to her, you need to put him up for adoption. Mm-hmm. You need to put him in foster care or whatever it is. So I started making money. And I remember I was 10 years old. I went to the supermarket, Ralph's, La Brea and 3rd. And I went to the supermarket and I said, hey, can I get a job? And they said, how old are you? I said, I'm 10 years old. They said, you have to be at least 16 to work here to bag groceries. I said, you have to be 16 to bag groceries? I go, well, how old is that guy right there bagging groceries? They said, he's 16 years old. I said, well, I'm 10 years old, and I know not to put eggs at the bottom of the bag. So why don't you give me a job?
Wow, you snitched?
Yeah, snitched. Well, he was sitting there, and I'm like, this lady's going to come back and say, this kid messed up my eggs, right? So they said, no, that's not going to work. So I was walking out of the store, and I saw this lady bringing a grocery basket back into the store. And I said, and I watched her take the basket and push it into this machine. And then the machine gave her a stamp. And I said, hey, lady, what is that? She goes, well, every time you put a grocery basket in this machine, you take it out of the parking lot because they don't want grocery baskets in the parking lot, you get a stamp. And if you get 100 stamps, you get $1 worth of food. So I just worked that parking lot.
Wow.
And I just kept putting baskets in that machine.
That's not loitering?
That's not loitering. It was there.
Working.
I'm working. I'm putting baskets, and I'm coming home with food for my mother.
Wow.
And I'm saying, okay, here we go, mama. You don't have to worry about feeding us. That's right? So you start hustling. That clicks right there. Like when somebody goes to your core and say, hey, you can't afford to keep your family, which is something that's very real today because we're seeing single mothers who are struggling. Half the women in this country are living at or below the poverty line. And we're seeing them struggle to try and keep food on the table. And the government's taking them away because of that. I've seen that. I've come too close to that. I have tasted that abyss. So,
that's what drives people to a life of crime. A lot of brothers in the hood feel like, you know what, I got to go make ends meet. So they start going to do illegal things to put food on the table.
Yes. Position to fail. Position to fail. I wanted to look at Martin Luther King through Coretta Scott King's eyes.
Explain that.
So I went and I went to her a number of years, and finally I got her to sell me the rights to her life story because I wanted to look at Martin through her eyes. I felt like she's the one that knew him better than anybody. I felt like Coretta is the true queen of America because she's the one who was with him through the civil rights movement. She's the one who raised their 4 children. She's the one who raised over $50 million to build the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolent Change. And she is the one who made Martin Luther King's birthday a national holiday, the only American to have his birthday as a national holiday.
And she sued the government.
She sued, yes, and I'm making a movie. I'm making a movie about that.
And won.
Yes, and won. I'm making a movie about that, which is going to change everybody's perspective. And I learned so much from her, and she taught me so much. I'll never forget, she said to me, Byron, as black people, we had 4 major challenges. Number 1, end slavery. Number 2, end Jim Crow. Now, Jim Crow, in my opinion, was more damaging than slavery, because as slaves, we were property. We were an asset. And when we became free, we became a liability. And that's when they introduced Jim Crow. I need to murder you. I need to lynch you. I need to incarcerate you because you are competing with me. End Jim Crow. And then she said, achieve, number 3, achieve civil rights. And then she choked up. And the next thing she said pretty much changed the way I looked at the world. She said, the real reason they killed my Martin, achieve economic inclusion.
That's right. The Poor People's March.
That's it.
Poor People's Movement.
That's it. She said they didn't kill my Martin over I Have a Dream. They killed my Martin over the speech, The Other America.
That's right.
That's the speech. That's the speech everybody needs to know innately. There are 2 Americas. One America has opportunity and access to capital and education. And what does it matter if I can sit at the same lunch counter as my white counterpart and I cannot afford the same hamburger?
That's right.
There are 2 Americas, and 2 Americas will not survive. That's why they killed him, the Poor People's March. He was going to deliver 500,000 poor people, mainly poor white people.
Yeah, of all races. That would have been a game changer.
That was the game changer.
Yeah.
He was delivering over 500,000 poor people to the nation's capital. And the government said, hey, this guy's a threat to national security. And we're making a movie about this, that they gave the orders to kill him.
Yeah.
And
have you ever read William Pepper's book, his lawyer?
That's the book I bought.
Oh.
Orders to Kill.
Orders
so
to Kill.
we're making, that's the reason I got in the movie business, to tell that story and other stories like it. So, and that's why we are the first movie studio to go direct to the movie theaters. And we deal directly with the theaters. So when she told me that, it really changed everything. And I said, you and Martin have done an amazing job. I said, the 4th and final chapter, this generation will deal with it. You guys took care of the first 3, and now it's time for us to deal with that 4th chapter, economic inclusion. And I never forgot, she said, they will come after you. They will come after you.
They're kind of coming after you now, right?
They always come after me. Yeah. But, listen, people always, I've made it very clear, do not live in fear. You cannot live in fear. I burnt my knee pads long ago. A lot of brothers. So a lot of brothers say to me, they're going to blackball you. They're going to blackball you. And I'm like, hey, when your black ass was born, they blackballed you. You just didn't get the email. You were born blackballed. You've been positioned to fail. And you have to recognize where you are. And it took a lot for me to start to see what was going on. Having kids, taking my kids to school, taking my daughter Chloe to school when she was 2 or 3 years old, and she's in the back seat, and my other daughter Olivia, and my son Lucas wasn't born at the time, and my daughter Chloe started counting and telling me all the homeless people she was seeing out on the streets. Daddy, I see another homeless person. Daddy, I see another homeless person. Daddy, when are we going to stop to help them? How come we're not helping them, Daddy? 3 years old. And by the time I got to the next light, I started crying. I started crying because I realized I had turned off my empathy button.
Right.
And this little girl.
It was normalized.
It was normalized. That's right. You got it. And this little girl turned that empathy button back on. And what was it about me that I was going to act like I don't see you? And I said, yeah, you know what? We are going to help them. What's going on here? There's a matrix that's happening here, and we're going to crack the code. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I said, you know what? It's the 4 Ds. It's the 4 Ds.
What are the 4 Ds?
They dismiss you. It was perfected on women hundreds of years ago. Just dismiss you. Hey, you know what? I'm not getting a fair shake here. They just dismiss you. Then you get a little upset about being dismissed, and you say, no, this is real. We have to really get this on track. Then they discredit you. Oh, look at that. Okay. And then you get really a little louder, a little bit more aggressive, not in a bad way, but like, we have to really deal with this. Then they move on to that 3rd D, and they have to move on to that 3rd D to get right with their Christian selves. They demonize you. And then once they hit that third D and they demonize you, they have a green light to go to that inevitable fourth D, destroy you.
Right.
So it's dismiss, discredit, demonize, destroy. And I watched and I looked at it and I said, wow, what is going on here? And I said, we are positioned to fail because of the nature of how we came into this country. We were brought here to create wealth, not to share the wealth. And you're brought here to build wealth, to make people wealthy, not to share it. And the moment we became free, we became a liability to them. And that's when they kicked in and said, here you go. I'm going to incarcerate you. And I say, listen, they get us in the schoolroom by making sure you don't get a proper education.
Right.
They get you in the boardroom by making sure you don't have access to capital that's not predatory and business opportunities. And they get you in the courtroom by making sure there are laws that incarcerate you and lock you up long before you get choked to death in the streets.
Now, how did you get the capital for a lot of the stuff that you did? Because, like you said, they don't give us anything. How were you able to get that mind frame and have that business mind frame to purchase and do some of the moves that you were able to do?
Like how you pivot from artist to executive?
Well, from watching that, understanding this, you have to understand where you are, understanding how you're positioned to fail. If you don't understand, if you don't get into that matrix, then you can't go to the next level. So I said, okay, how do we get around that? When you look at an Eric Garner getting choked to death in the streets, right? They didn't position him properly in the schoolroom to have that education so he can have access to that capital. So he wasn't standing on the sidewalk, but rather he owned the block. He owned the store in which he was standing in front of. How does that happen? Where he gets choked to death. It's happy. The battle is not in the streets. It's in the schoolroom. It's making sure we get a proper education.
Right.
It's in the boardroom, making sure you have access to capital that's not predatory. And it's in the courtroom, like we are in the Supreme Court. We'll talk a little bit about that. And this was something that, I started supporting Senator Obama long before Black America or anybody knew his name, right? Because he came to folks who had the capital to support. I was happy to support. And after he became president, I said, I'm not any different than anybody else. I have an agenda. My agenda is that I want for all Americans to have equal access to capital and opportunity, especially African Americans, the furthest left behind. So I said, I have two asks of you. I said, you just spent $700 billion to bail out the banks. And I want you to audit the banks and see if they're lending money to black people. Not minorities, black people. Because minorities, that's defined as white women.
Yes.
And the new minorities, gay white men. But if you actually say, I'm going to audit you to see if you're lending money to black people, Negroes, whichever decade you want to go to, you're going to see that we're not getting access to capital. And at that point, I had seen the data that unemployment under Obama's administration, unemployment for black America had gone up and had gone down for white America, and home ownership had hit a 25-year low. So I said that audit will send a very clear message to the banks to start lending money to black folks, and they'll start digging black people up out of graves and lending money to maintain their good standing with the United States government.
So
and
you got a loan?
No. So
Okay.
I went to him, and that was the other thing. And I said, listen, the other thing I want you to do is just understand that the United States government has over $1 trillion pension fund, over a T, government worker pension fund money. People who work for the government, over $1 trillion. Not one penny of that is managed by African Americans.
Wow.
And I just need you to make sure that, maybe $150 billion is in the hands of qualified African American money managers, because that's going to be invested in African American entrepreneurs in our communities, and that will create jobs in our community, and we can start to address the economic genocide by making sure you don't have access to a proper education, making sure you don't have access to capital. That equals genocide. I'm going to squeeze you out. I'm going to take the oxygen out of the room. I'm going to position you to fail. You don't have a proper education. You don't have access to capital. That's not predatory. You don't have opportunities. So I said those two things will change the game. Just notify the banks. I'm going to give you a report card on black people and carving out about $150 billion of government worker pension fund money, a lot of it coming from people of color. And that did not happen, but that was my ask.
You sounded like Barack just now. That did not happen.
That did not happen.
Well, why didn't that happen?
I honestly think we, as a people, we were not clear in our ask, and we didn't hold him and others accountable.
A lot of people say that now. A lot of people feel like we just was so happy that we had
a beautiful black
person in the
family,
White House
and that's
that
it.
we didn't ask for nothing. There was no democracy that came behind it.
We didn't have an ask. We weren't, look, other communities were brilliant, and they had an ask, and they got results. We weren't clear in our ask. I was clear in my ask, and I said, this is what I need for Black America. I need economic inclusion. We need to address the fourth and final chapter, and ultimately that's what's going to make America better, is that everybody is fully, maximizing their potential.
We have to ask you about higher education.
You still ain't tell us how you got the money, though.
Oh, how I got? Oh, you want to know? Okay.
How you got the money? Comedian, writing jokes.
Yes, to getting the money.
Able about the Weather Channel.
He's trying to get all of y'all money.
How'd you get the money,
You ain't take us to the...
Okay, my money's easy. My money's easy. Like I said, I had to learn how to make money from the day I started saying, look, I'm going to help my mother. I'm going to make sure I'm not a burden.
Right.
That's the easy part. Making money is easy, and that's a mindset. You could put up a radar and say, where's trouble, and trouble will find you. You could put up a radar and say, where's this, and it will come to you. But when you put up that radar that says, okay, how are we going to make money in an honest way, in a legal way, you're going to figure it out, especially today with the internet.
Yeah, but
with
$300 million to buy the Weather Channel?
By the way, $300 million is not a lot of money. And so I think.
Okay, what kind of billions Byron working with? Let me get let me get 50 then.
Just give me 10.
10. I listen. 300 million. I want to make sure everybody understands how much money there's out there. There is out there, and it is there for you. That money is there for you, and you can make all that and more. That money's there, especially today. I mean, look, in America, this is the greatest financial system out there. We have over $20 trillion in liquidity in our financial systems. That money is just swirling, looking for a place to invest and looking for a place to get a safe return. That money's available to you. That money's looking for you. And there aren't that many people who can actually invest it, protect it, return it with a return. So there's plenty of capital. There's no shortage of capital in America.
How do you get it, though?
Great question. All right, so let's talk about it.
All right, we listening.
All right, well, let's talk about it. Then we got to go back a little bit.
Okay.
Because I want everybody to understand it innately, because I want everybody out there to be a billionaire. And
I like when you talk like that.
I want everybody
to be a billionaire.
I want everybody to be a billionaire, okay?
Let's talk Byron Allen.
Because, by the way, God wants you to be that too, wants you to be your best. So I'm here to help.
All right.
So let's talk about it. I started my company from my dining room table in 93. And I did a television special where I interviewed a bunch of funny friends.
I remember that.
Right? So a weekly 1-hour show called Entertainers with Byron Allen.
Yep.
And I sat at my dining room table and I called all 1,300 television stations and asked them to carry the show for free. And on average, they all told me no about 50 times. And literally, I sat at my dining room table from sunup to sundown, and I got about 50,000 no's. And after a year of doing that, I was able to squeeze out about 150 yeses. I got a TV station in every market from New York to Waterloo, Iowa, right? And so that was my lineup. Now, Tribune had said to me, Byron, if you get 75% of the country, we will sell your commercial time. Because I said to the TV stations, there's 14 minutes of commercial time. I'll keep 7 minutes. You keep 7 minutes. I'll sell my 7 minutes to national advertisers. You, local TV station, you sell your 7 minutes to local advertisers.
Smart.
Right? You sell it to local banks, car dealers, supermarkets. I'll sell my 7 minutes to McDonald's and Pepsi and Johnson & Johnson and General Motors. You sell yours to the local, sport.
And they didn't pay for the show. You paid to get everything
That's right.
done.
They didn't pay for the show. I gave them the show for free.
You produced the show, did everything yourself.
Everything myself. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Sat there for 1 year and just worked the phones like crazy for 1 year. The hardest thing I've ever done, give away a TV show for free.
Right.
So now the problem was, after I did that, good old Tribune said, we changed our mind. We're not going to give you an advance of $400,000 so you can go into production and produce this TV show. So I said, okay, I'm not going to sit here for 1 year and tell these TV stations I'm not going to deliver what I told you I would deliver. So I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. And I decided I'm going forward. And I went forward. I didn't know how I was going to get it done. But Martin Luther King, like he said, that's faith, taking that step.
Taking the first step when you don't see the rest of the staircase.
And the rest of the staircase. There it is, right? So I went forward. And it was tough. My home went in and out of foreclosure over 14 times over about a 4 or 5 year period.
Went from bankruptcy to billionaire.
From bankruptcy to billionaire. That's exactly right. There was there were days I didn't eat. There were days they turned my phone off, and this is before mobile phones. I was calling people from a payphone. And I got to know the lady really well at the bank, and I'll never forget her. She says, your file keeps coming on my desk. She says, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm not paying my mortgage because I'm paying the cameraman, and I'm paying the sound person, and I'm paying to get tape, and I'm paying to have my show edited, and I'm paying to put it on the satellite, and I'm just trying to put a show in production. I don't have the money to do it. And she says, listen up, honey. She says, don't let it go past day 89, because day 89, day 90, it goes to the lady next to me, Agnes, and you don't want your file to go to her desk.
Right. That's just a mean name.
Agnes is not as nice as me.
Yeah, white women named Agnes don't play no games.
So I said day 89, and that was it. And I showed up every day on the 89th day, and I paid my mortgage, but I was floating. And finally, I turned the corner, and I signed up all the movie studios to buy advertising. Before that, I was selling 1-800 spray on hair. And after I got the movie studios.
Okay, Envy.
Yeah, it is.
He just got his.
This is real.
That's real.
He just got his.
Oh, you just got his. Is that spray on there?
It's not spray on, it's plug-in.
It's plug-in?
Yeah,
Not no
plug-in.
damn plug-in.
Okay.
We would love
It
to get
looks
him
good,
on
man.
investment.
It looks good. I mean, that's
Thanks,
one.
Byron.
Thank you. I probably got $20 for that can.
Thanks,
so
Byron.
this is real. Oh, is that real?
thanks,
Okay.
Byron.
Oh, you still got the spray on.
Oh, we sell it to everybody, right?
Yeah.
So we kept selling, and I got movie studios, and I said, I'm going to go to soft drinks. And I got soft drinks, and I went to fast foods, and I went to packaged goods, and I went to pharmaceuticals, and I went to automotive, and I went industry by industry by industry, and I went to board of directors, and I went to CEOs and chief
And
marketing.
this was you. This was not an assistant. This was not a friend. This
I'm
is
on the
you
phone.
pitching yourself.
I'm going day and night. I'm on the plane every night. And I'm 6 meetings a day, whatever it is. And finally, I put another show on. I'm saying, I know all these television stations. I know all these advertisers. I put another show on, another show. Next thing you know, I have 43 shows on the air. One of the largest privately held libraries in the world. And I went to Verizon. I said, look, I want to launch 10 networks with you. They said, we won't give you 10. We'll give you 6. We launched 6 24-hour HD networks. I went back a few years later and said I got a 7th network. We launched a 7th network because we ended up being one of the largest producers of court shows. We launched a 7th network. And then a buddy came to me, and a guy who satellited my networks. Success begets success. And he came to me and he said, can we have dinner? And I said, sure. And we sat down. He says, you don't realize this. Before I was the CEO of this satellite company that satellites our networks, he said, I used to be the chief operating officer of the Weather Channel. And he said, you should buy the Weather Channel. He goes, I know you don't think about the Weather Channel in L.A. because it's always 80 degrees and sunny, but it's a great business, and it generates hundreds of millions of dollars. And the people who own it just don't want to own it anymore because they're in a partnership, a 3-way partnership. It's Bain, it's Blackstone, and it's NBC Universal, and they want to get out of the deal. And I said, okay. And he started talking about it. And I said, okay, let me get into it. We got into it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to buy the Weather Channel. And I called a guy up, and I said, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to buy the Weather Channel. And I said, it generates quite a bit of capital. And I need $310 million.
Oh, so you didn't use your own money?
I didn't use my own money.
Oh, okay.
I borrowed it.
Okay.
So the guy, I called him on a Friday morning.
You got his number? I like
Yeah, call him. Yeah, I'll get you his number. And by the way, and here's what I knew. He has $100 billion that he manages. So when you have $100 billion that you manage, you have a problem. You have $100 billion that you must shepherd, invest, and get back with a return.
Right. You have to do something with that money.
You got to do something with it. Right. There it is. So I said, look, I'm here to help. You got $100 billion. I'm here to help you unload some of that, put it somewhere, and get that return. I'm an asset. Called him on a Friday morning. He sent his top executive to see me the next business day, Monday at 2 o'clock. Sat in my conference room for 4 hours. He said, this is one of the most amazing business stories I've ever heard. You are a brilliant entrepreneur. I'm going to give you a commitment letter, a term sheet tonight, and a commitment letter tomorrow morning. Please close on the Weather Channel. Wow. And we did. See, if you know money, money will know you and love you and be with you. Money's easy. Don't be afraid of money. Let money love you. Money will always be with you. There's plenty of money.
Now, money loves me.
Did you act cool when he said that, or were you like, all right, thanks, man, or did you give a little scream?
No, I said like, I'm here to help. Like it's I'm here to help.
Because in my head, when he said yes, I'm going to give you that commitment letter tomorrow.
Yeah,
I would have
cool
been
as
like,
a fan.
But that's not the first time you've done something like that. You purchased 11 small market networks from USA TV.
Well,
right?
one of the first things I purchased a movie distribution company, Freestyle Releasing, because I wanted to go straight to the movie theaters. Because we as African Americans, we've never had that, where we control our distribution right to the movie theaters. And I bought the Griot. And the Griot is an amazing African American publishing.
We love
watch Natasha on there all the time.
Natasha's the great one. She's amazing. And Todd Johnson just came on board to be our fearless leader. And I felt it was important in buying the Griot to own, our voice, to own our position in the marketplace, to really control our narrative. It's very important to me because when my children were born, I had a guy say to me, a white guy, he says to me, why is it important that you have black ownership? What's wrong with black targeted? Because there are a lot of black faces. And I said, I'm glad you asked me that question. Let me tell you why I bought the Griot and why I bought a movie distribution company and why I own 10 cable networks. Let me ask you something. As a white man who has children, are you comfortable with me controlling the images of your daughters and how they are produced and how they're depicted and how they grow up looking at themselves? Are you cool with me having 100% control over how your white daughter sees herself? And he said no. And I said, great. I said, I expected you to answer the question that way. Now understand me as a black man and my black daughters. Now that they're here, I'm going to take a seat at the table, and I'm going to control how they're produced and how they're depicted and how they grow up and how they see themselves. Because at this moment in my life, nothing is more important to me than them.
So when you bought those networks from USA for $290 million, that was your intention? Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what we have to do is we have to have ownership. That's what we need to do. We need to have ownership in our community. And that's what I've always pushed for, whether it's the Griot or whether it's distributing to movie theaters or whether it's owning cable networks or whether it's owning TV stations or whether it's owning radio stations. You have to own the game, not play the game. And that's always been my position. Own the game, don't play the game.
What do you think you're seeing, though? Like, so you talked about some of the stuff that you're seeing on these TV networks.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on the stuff that you're seeing out there on TV?
I mean, it's varied. I mean, there's an audience for all of it, right? Look, you have 7 billion people on the planet. 7 billion. You don't need that many people. You have about 4 billion connected devices around the world. You don't need that many people to really actually appreciate what you do, and you have a sustainable business. So, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter what I think. There's an audience for it.
Right? What are your channels, and what kind of programming are you putting up?
We have comedy.tv. which is, our comedy network, pets.tv.
Pets,
There's more pets in America. Cars,
My Destination.
My Destination Travel. We put out movies. We put out, 47 Meters Down. And, this Friday, November 1, we have Arctic Dogs, our first animated movie, because I want us to be in the family business and I want us to understand that business, how to put out animated movies. We're building. I told my wife when I met her almost 20 years ago, she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm building the world's biggest media company, the world's biggest media."
Can you do that? Well, yeah, you can. I'm about to say, can you do that putting out black content? Because I haven't heard you mention any black content.
You know what? We are definitely, one of the first movies we put out when I bought Freestyle was Meet the Blacks.
Okay.
With Deion Taylor, who
Can't
I
get
love.
blacker than that.
Yeah, it actually
Mike
says
Epps,
Meet the Blacks,
Lil
right?
Duval.
Right, all of that stuff. So, that's what, but what I've always said, and I've said to, young kids, you know what? I don't want to play in the Negro leagues. I'm going to play in the global leagues. I bought the Weather Channel to make it very clear to all of Wall Street, look at me as a global player, not as a black player. Mm-hmm. I'm global and I happen to be black. And there's a big difference. So my assets are global. So I'm not.
It could be either or, though, right?
It could be either.
You got somebody like Tyler Perry.
Tyler's amazing.
Unapologetically,
I love him.
Caters to the black audience.
And that's a great business.
He's a global brand.
And that's a big brand. But the assets that I'm purchasing, I'm making sure that they have the ability to be global. So one of the first things I did after buying the Weather Channels, I announced that we're doing something that's never been done before. We're doing the Weather Channel in Espanol. It's the first 24-hour Spanish language weather channel.
How you say it's snowing in Spanish, Drum? Nevando.
There it is. And so I want to make it very clear that, we're global. We're going.
The Spanish Weather Channel be sexy though. It'd be mad sexy on the Spanish Weather Channel.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, they be you gotta watch it one day and you'll see for yourself. It's not your average Weather Channel. It's sexy.
So you got a sexy weatherman?
We haven't started
that. The guys are sexy.
Yeah,
guys and women are sexy. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't started that, but
it's raining men.
It's raining. We're gonna get that done. So look, at the end of the day, the capital's there. And then also you have to make sure you're positioned to win. And I learned this from a guy, God bless his soul, Roger King. And Roger and I became good friends. Roger came to me once. He said, and I live in L.A., he said, will you come to New York and pitch me? And I said, sure. And I went to New York to pitch him. He has offices on Broadway. Roger King had a company called King World. Mm-hmm. And he distributed Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Oprah, right? All these amazing shows. Mm-hmm. These were his. The reason you have Oprah is because of Roger King. Mm-hmm. And I pitched him. And he said, wow. He said, I heard you were a great salesman. He said, you really are a great salesman. And that meant a lot to me because Roger's the most successful at that point. He says, I can only think of one guy who was a better salesman than you. And I said, who's that? Mm-hmm. He said, my daddy. And he said, my daddy loved salesmen. He says, as a matter of fact, he opened his drawer, his desk drawer, and he pulled out a tie. He said, this tie belonged to my daddy. I want you to have it because my daddy would have liked you a lot.
Wow.
And it was just mental.
Right? You know a deal is getting done after that.
Yeah, he says, he goes, listen up. He said, I want to share something with you. I said, sure. This is a very wealthy, successful man. He said, I didn't realize how bad it was out there and how much racism there was out there until I went and started selling Oprah. He said, one of my first pitches, when I went and pitched a TV station to put Oprah on the air, a guy looked at me and said, I'll never put that in on my television station.
Wow.
And looked me in the face. And he said, I got up from the chair I was sitting in and I threw it across the desk at him. And then I took the show across the street, and I sold it to his competitor, and I ran that guy out of town.
Damn.
And he said, but you know what really upset me is that he thought he could say that to me. He thought I was good with that. He thought I was cool with that. He said, my mama and daddy raised me better than that. Roger King, I'll never forget this. He said, so listen up. He goes, I know you've been calling all these television stations from your dining room table. And you've been calling them every day, sun up to sundown. I just started my company. He goes, and I play golf with a lot of these guys, and they're laughing and joking about how much you call them and how they're not going to call you back. And they're not going to, and he said, and they're not going to do business with you because you're black. And he says, I don't like that. I'll never forget this. He says, so listen up. He goes, I'm having my birthday party at my beach house in New Jersey. And he says, everybody who owns and operates a TV station is going to be out there. He goes, I hired Paul Anka, the Four Tops, and Elton John to celebrate my birthday. They're doing a concert. And the Sarducci brothers are doing a half-hour fireworks show. He goes, please be at my beach house this weekend. I go, okay. I didn't even have the money to get out there. I took the bus all the way out there. And I get out there and say, man, I hope I'm on this man's list. And I get there and I go, I'm here at Byron Allen, see Roger King. Go, oh, yeah, the boss has been looking for you. He keeps coming out and going, where are you? So I go in and he goes, Byron Allen, now this party can get started. And he comes
that
up
can
to
mean one or two things in Hollywood, though.
Yeah, continue. He comes up, he gives me that bear hug. He says to me, who here is not returning your phone calls?
Ooh, on the spot.
Right there. And I said, everybody? He goes, watch this. Hey, Bob, put down that guacamole. Come talk to me. He says, Bob, do you want to renew Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and Oprah? And the guy just kind of nervously laughed. Of course, because if he didn't, his job was over. He goes, do me a favor. He goes, call Byron back. Figure out some business with him, and then we'll talk about what I'm going to charge you for Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and Oprah.
Relationships.
And he did that for the whole, and he got up on the stage. We got the Four Tops, and we got Elton John, and we have the hardest working man in Hollywood here in my backyard, Byron Allen. This is the kind of guy you want to do business with. And I never had enough. Game changer, right? And I never realized that persisted. But I'll tell you something that's historic that we're going through. And he taught me that. He goes, you got to position yourself to succeed.
Right.
And that's what he was doing. So the Obama administration came to me because these big corporations were trying to get bigger. They were trying to buy bigger assets. And so the Obama administration came to me and said, Comcast wants to buy this and Charter wants to buy that, blah, blah, blah. Are they good corporate citizens? And I said, do you want the Hollywood answer or do you want the real answer? They said, we want the real answer. I said, the answer is not no, it's hell no. They're not good corporate citizens. They said, how do you figure? I said, well, the industry spends $70 billion a year licensing cable networks. $70 billion. And African-American owned media gets zero. And that's not fair. And they say, we hear that a lot, but what are you willing to do? They said people are afraid to speak up because of reciprocity, of repercussions. And I said, I'll speak up. And I said, but I'm going to do it in a way we won't have to deal with it anymore. So I filed these lawsuits that ended up being historic. I filed a $20 billion lawsuit against Comcast and a $10 billion lawsuit against Charter. And
why weren't you afraid to do that as a TV guy?
Once again, you got to burn the knee pads. And I knew we were positioned to fail. We didn't have true economic inclusion, that we weren't really dealing with the fourth and final chapter. So I said, we're going to do this the right way. So we took them to court. And downtown, one of the judges ruled in Comcast's favor twice. And the other judge ruled on the Comcast lawsuit, and the other judge ruled in our favor on the Charter case. Charter didn't like it. They said, let's go to the Ninth Circuit. I said, well, if you're going to take me to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, I'll take Comcast to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Wow.
So we went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then something historic happened. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in our favor not once but twice on both Comcast and Charter. Comcast was very upset about it and said, well, we're going to take this to the Supreme Court. And now
That's going on now.
Now we're going to be in the Supreme Court November 13th.
You said you felt like that was an insult to the black community.
It is a big insult to the black community because
Why?
The truth of the matter is what I need the black community to truly understand, my case really isn't in the Supreme Court anymore. We, unfortunately, are in the Supreme Court. What happened was the Supreme Court said, we're not going to look at the Byron Allen case with Comcast and Charter. We pretty much agree with the Ninth Circuit. That's a dispute between you guys. But we are going to look at the Civil Rights Act of 1866, Section 1981.
Now, what is that exactly?
Great question. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 was put on the books after, so we were freed pretty much December of 1865. And instead of getting what some historians believe, reciprocity, 40 acres and a mule, we got this law. We got this law, and basically it says we will have fair contracting, economic inclusion in government contracting and in commercial contracting, because they knew that the newly freed slaves, African Americans, were not going to be treated freely in commercial contracting and government contracting, and it was essential for us to be integrated into the financial fiber of America. So this law was put on the books 153 years ago to make sure we had an economic pathway for economic inclusion. 150, it's the very first civil rights statute in America. It gave birth to civil rights, and it is the civil rights statute that allows us to have economic inclusion and stop economic genocide. So what Comcast said, and the Ninth Circuit told them to get out of here with this, Comcast said, in order for you or Byron or anybody, any minority, to use this law, you must prove that the reason we discriminated against you is 100% because you are black. The sole reason we discriminated against you, Charlemagne, is that you are 100% of the reason is that you're black. It could be 99% that you're black and 1% that you're wearing tennis shoes. And you can't use the law. You can't bring the lawsuit against me. So they're eviscerating it. They're making it impossible for you to use it. Right. Now, that is called the but-for standard. That is what Comcast and Charter, that's what they're pushing for. They're pushing for this civil rights statute to go away. Now, what the Ninth Circuit said in favor of black folks and all minorities, Hispanics, Asians, everybody, that it's not the sole reason, which is the but-for, it's the motivating factor. Okay. If any part of the reason, if they discriminated against you,
it would be impossible for it to be 100%.
There it is. It's impossible. So it can't be used. So if it's 20% or 30%, any part of the reason, now you can use it. So that is why we're in there in the Supreme Court. Now, here's what's happened. Comcast went and got what's known as an amicus brief, a friend of the court, got Donald Trump's Department of Justice to write them an amicus brief saying, yes, let's roll minorities back to 1865. Let's take those Negroes back to slavery. So I thought,
they're actually putting that on the books.
The Donald Trump's DOJ wrote an amicus brief in favor of in favor of Comcast's position against us, and not only that, which we thought was unbelievable and hideous, something we've never seen. Comcast said, "Well, listen, we have 30 minutes in front of the Supreme Court. And Byron has 30 minutes in front of the Supreme Court. But you know what we're going to do, Comcast? This is what Comcast says. We're going to give 10 of our 30 minutes in front of Donald Trump's Supreme Court. We're going to give 10 of our 30 minutes to Donald Trump's DOJ. So now, on November 13th, we're standing in the Supreme Court in a Donald Trump era where we've got Donald Trump's DOJ arguing against us to take the original, the first civil rights statute, and eviscerate it.
Hold on now, Mr. Allen. Now, given the makeup of the federal courts, aren't you concerned that this new case can undo civil rights for a whole generation?
It could take us back to 1865, all minorities.
So is it worth it?
I didn't petition to bring it to the Supreme Court. They did. Right. And then what they did is they made what I consider, what I call institutionalized racism. They treat us like we are a bunch of monkeys.
Well, that's how they look at us.
That's right, looking for a banana. So here's what they say. Hey, Byron, drop the case.
Right, that's what they're trying to make you do.
Drop the case. Drop the case, and we might meet with you. We might work with you. Well, that's a racist offer. That's a I think you're nothing more than a monkey, and here's a banana.
Now I'm playing white devil's advocate here, right?
Yeah, okay.
Right? I mean, shouldn't you want to kind of drop the case if it's going to set us back, a whole generation back when it comes to civil rights?
No, because I didn't.
You not fight.
First of all, we won in the Ninth Circuit twice. We won twice, and I didn't bring it to the Supreme Court. They brought it to the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't come to us in a racist way, and you don't look at us like a bunch of monkeys looking for a banana, then you do it the same way you do it with all white people.
You just pay them.
No, you settle it up. You settle the case, and then it's dropped.
Right.
And so they didn't come
Settle
to
means
There's
pay
no
them.
offer of a settlement.
pay it. Whatever it is, you settle it up. But see, they never met with me.
Yeah.
And see, I asked them to meet with me, but why
They
won't
want you to drop it and then meet with, and then maybe meet.
That's
with
right,
you.
which is something you would never ask a white person to do.
Never in a
So,
million years.
right, so you never ask anybody white to do that. So here, when we asked them to sit with us, they said, no, we're not going to sit with you. As a matter of fact, my government relations person went to the government relations person of Charter, and he said, you should sit with Byron to resolve this. And she said to him, we don't negotiate with terrorists.
Whoa.
Okay? That's what she said. And he said, you know what? I have a number of white clients who are much tougher than Byron, and you've never called them a terrorist. And I said, there's the difference. Because
You should have said domestic terrorists.
right, because they look at us as, you're not equal. You don't
Right.
sue me.
How dare you try to get something that you deserve?
All right, and how dare you sue me and use peaceful tactics? See, the offer is racist. Like, you drop it, and then I might sit with you, and we might work something out. So that's why you have to be really clear that stop the institutionalized racism, sit down Comcast, sit down Charter, don't jeopardize the civil rights of over 100 million people. These are folks that, they're doing the wrong thing. And, Senator Kamala Harris, she was phenomenal. She wrote an amicus brief in our favor, and she got Senator Cory Booker to sign it, Senator Blumenthal, Senator Wyden, and 8 members of the Congressional Black Caucus. 8. Unfortunately, only 8 out of 55. Now, I believe we as Black Americans, we have to ask the other 47 congressional leaders, why didn't you sign this amicus brief? If you want our money, you want our vote, why aren't you signing something to protect our civil rights?
How has the feedback been from existing civil rights organizations? Like, what are they saying to you?
Michael Lawson is amazing. He wrote a phenomenal letter saying to folks, hey, he said he sent a letter to Brian Roberts and David Cohen of Comcast and said, this is wrong and you should sit down and don't challenge our civil rights. And a lot of folks are very upset. I mean, they've taken it to a level. It's bigger than me. It has very little to do with me at this point because they're challenging our civil rights. Right. Here's what will happen. You take away this civil rights. Now someone can fire you and you can't get a lawyer. That's the reason why the Chamber of Commerce gave them an amicus brief, because they didn't want their businesses to be sued. So now now you can't get a lawyer to take your case on contingency because it's hard to prove that 100% of the reason you were discriminated against. Damn near impossible. Right. So they don't want that law there to be used. So I say the moment people can discriminate against you and you can't hold them accountable, I say 3 words: welcome to hell.
Wow.
Welcome to hell. And you have to ask, why are you doing this, Comcast? Why are you standing in the United States Supreme Court physically with Donald Trump's DOJ trying to eviscerate this civil rights statute? Have respect, sit down with me, and let's work it out. And this goes away.
Is it true that Comcast executives told someone at your company they're not trying to create any more Bob Johnsons?
That is what someone told us. Absolutely.
Wow.
That is. And look, we'll think about it. Who has created wealth in this country that didn't come from entertainment for the most part? It's very hard. You have you can count on one hand. On one hand.
You mean black people or just
black
in general?
People.
Okay,
yeah, black people. Yeah, outside of sports and entertainment and your own talent, that's
We're
all.
not in the pharmaceuticals and the tech and
there it is, and that's why this lawsuit is important, because you need to protect this. Because what historians believe, this was our reciprocity. This is your pathway. You have to protect this law. I
want to set this up for you in a nice button because I know people will take this, right? And I know you got to go.
Yeah. No, I'm good. I got plenty of time. I'm here to hang out with you. I've been looking forward to this. I don't have a meeting. I'm good.
He said, I'm good. I make my own rules.
You got to make my own rules.
I make my own rules. I do what I got to do.
Yeah, I like hanging out with you. You kidding me? I want to come hang out with you a lot more. I love this.
But why is this such a special case? And in your opinion, why should we be so informed about it?
It's a very special case because it's the original Civil Rights Act in America. It's about protecting our economic inclusion. If we don't have economic inclusion, then you're done. If you are poor and black and don't have an education in America, they will treat a stray dog better than you. As a matter of fact, there are more animal shelters than there are homeless shelters. And so you can't live like this. You have to have access to a proper education. You have to have access to economics that can really get you to be a part of the American financial fiber. And so this law was designed to give us a pathway to that. This is now being taken away. This is one of the first time the acting Solicitor General, the Attorney General, is standing in the United States Supreme Court to roll back our civil rights to a point where we can't use them.
So what can we do? How can we help?
You can.
What kind of ruckus can we make?
You know what? Great question. First, having me here is fantastic, and thank you. Know what you're up against. This is one of those. They get you in the courtroom, and you don't even know about it.
And you can't normalize things like this.
You can't. That's right.
Because we've been so normalized with things that have been going on with Donald Trump.
That's right.
That it's like, okay, what else did we expect?
That's right. You got to protect your civil rights. Protect your civil rights. That's what I want us to do. Protect them. Go to your representatives. Ask all 47 of them. Go to the grill. If you go to the grill, we will post who signed it.
Right.
Then you'll see who didn't. Go to the 47 members of the Congressional Black Caucus and ask them, why didn't you sign this? And what are you going to do to say to Comcast and Charter, how dare you challenge our civil rights? In the words of Muhammad Ali, if you even dream about whipping my ass, you better wake up and apologize. That's what time of day it is.
So if you don't drop this case, our civil rights.
I'm not going to drop the case. We're going to go into the Supreme Court on November 13th. We're going to go in front of the 9 justices. We're going to take the position that we prevailed with in the Ninth Circuit twice. And Comcast, this is one of those, if you win, you lose. If you lose, you lose.
That's what I mean. So what are the ramifications if you do drop the case? If you do drop the case, what are the ramifications to the black community? How did that affect it? If you do drop the case.
If we do drop the case, then, well, which we won't, then at the end of the day, they'll say, well, then the Civil Rights Act is not at stake anymore. But they're the ones who brought it. Gotcha. And what they've done is they've upset a lot of folks in D.C. And I've said to David Cohen and Brian Roberts, and, through back channels, this is not good. You've upset a lot of folks. And that wasn't the intent. Now you got folks in D.C. who are now talking about quietly working and aggressively working to break up Comcast because they don't believe Comcast should be the largest cable operator, own TV stations, and own the largest portfolio of cable networks. That's not my agenda. I don't necessarily want to see Comcast broken up. I don't want to see their business hindered in any way. I just want them to just have the respect to sit down with me so we can work things out so nothing's being jeopardized. But they've upset a lot of folks. The NAACP has weighed in aggressively, and there are a lot of other folks, Color Change, ADOS. A lot of people are weighing in, and they're going to hold their representatives accountable and a lot of politicians accountable. And I think, Comcast is living in a bubble. And I get it. David Cohen gets paid over $14 million a year and has a budget over $125 million to make sure that he donates money to black civil rights organizations and politicians to make sure that there are not any issues. But he's gone a bridge too far because people are truly upset because what's at stake are our civil rights that could literally take us back to 1865. I didn't take this to the Supreme Court. They're the ones who need to drop it, and we're the ones that are in the right.
How much have you spent fighting this?
Millions. I don't even keep track.
Yeah,
I really don't. I mean, I don't. For me, this is about.
And who else is helping you besides yourself? Is there anybody saying, "Hey,
I've
doing this all on your own"?
I've done this. I've spent millions, and at the end of the day, this was something I remember talking to Coretta Scott King about. This is the 4th and final chapter. We're going to have economic inclusion, and by the way, this is not an ask. This is a take. And we're not asking. We're taking because it's rightfully ours. We have a seat at the table. No one ever invites you to have that. No one's going to hand that to you. This is ours. And you have to understand your value, your worth. We deserve better. We've built this with you. Good luck being the wealthiest country in the world without our free labor and hundreds of years of slavery. Good luck. We know who we are. We're kings and queens. Royalty runs through our blood. We're from Africa, the oldest continent. Okay? We know who we are. We know our value. I know that you've worked overtime to make me feel or make us feel like we have less value, but we know what we bring to the table. And we certainly bring to the table where you need to have the respect to sit down with us. When you haven't even sat down with us, David Cohen and Brian Roberts, and that's a problem. And by the way, The reason why you're the number one cable operator in America is because black entrepreneurs didn't have the money. A lot of black entrepreneurs were awarded the cable system in the black communities, but black entrepreneurs didn't have access to the capital to physically lay the cable down to the home. So the reason why you're the number one cable operator in America and you have all the black cities and all the black neighborhoods is because the black entrepreneur didn't have access to capital.
And we still don't.
Right.
And so if you're going to take all this money out of our community with African-American cable subscribers, then just have the respect to sit down and let's work this out and not jeopardize the civil rights of over 100 million Americans living today, minorities today in America, and over 1 billion in the future.
How do we change that, though? You talk about, finances. We can't get money. They're not lending us money.
That's right.
And the banks that we do have can't give us necessarily the amount that we need.
That's right.
Most of the time. So
That's right.
It's
you have to have home
difficult.
ownership. You have to have home ownership because you need that home ownership. So especially when you have a child that's born. So when that child is 18, you can refinance that house and send that kid to college. There is no President Barack Hussein Obama without Harvard in his biography.
Correct.
You got to send these kids to school.
That's what I was going to ask you earlier about higher education, because we've been having a lot of debates up here where people feel like it's not necessarily what we need to do. People are going into debt and spending a lot of money on an education and then coming out of school and not even knowing what they want to do.
We have to finance our kids. We have to make sure they get in school and they stay in school. And we have to check the percentages. If you see that the top 100 universities in America have less than 0.5% of black kids in their population, we won't end the economic genocide. You can just look at the population of the top 100 universities in America. And if you're 0.5%, then you're not going to get recruited by the biggest corporations, and the biggest Wall Street firms. You've got to get into these colleges. And we have to fund our kids in these colleges. And we have to make sure our kids have seats in these colleges.
Now, what about HBCUs? You mentioned.
Absolutely. You got to fund them all, and you've got to make sure they're properly funded. The real reason why I went after Comcast and Charter, it didn't have anything to do with my cable networks. It didn't. What happened was a gentleman wanted to do the Black College Sports Network in partnership with the HBCUs, and Comcast did not accept it, and that would have made a lot of money for these black colleges. Absolutely. And it would have educated the Black College Sports Network. This is what he wanted to do. That would have educated a lot of black kids. And when they didn't do that, that's when I came off the bench and said, okay, I'm going to light you up like a Christmas tree. Okay? That was the real reason why I got into it, was when I saw what happened with the Black College Sports Network, which I don't own. I just knew.
Why didn't you buy it?
I just knew. I just knew that these black.
I like that talk.
Right? I knew that these black colleges were going to benefit, and these black kids were going to get the education that they deserved and not have to pay. And that's what I said. And I remember I said to Tom Rutledge at Charter, Tom Rutledge said, well, you sued me and blah, 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 because I was trying to get my merger done. I said, Tom, if you really want to know the truth, why I sued you, it's when I saw you in the newspaper with Al Sharpton, and you had taken a photo with Al, and you said, and this is no disrespect to Al, you said, we have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with black people. And I said, Al, who is the white guy who speaks for all black people? And why do you think there's a black guy that speaks for all black people? And why do you think he speaks for me? And so if that white guy doesn't exist for you, then that black guy doesn't exist for me. And the very idea that you can go to a black person to speak for all black people is a racist idea. And that is a racist document. This is the head native speaking for all the other natives. That's wrong. That's wrong.
Has Al Sharpton been helping him to block you a little bit?
No, I wouldn't say he's been helping to block, but I think what they do is they go to people like the Urban League and the NAACP and folks like that, and they make donations. And because they make donations, maybe they don't speak up quite the way they should, in my humble opinion. I don't think the Urban League should have spoken out against net neutrality, which they did. President Obama fought to get net neutrality, And if we didn't have net neutrality, you wouldn't have gotten the video out of Ferguson, because they would have throttled the internet, and they would have made it tough for you to watch that video coming out of Ferguson.
Wow.
Black America needs net neutrality like Black America needs food, water, and oxygen. And you have to ask your civil rights organizations. Ask them. Ask all of them. Did you speak out against net neutrality? Did you work with Comcast to try and stop net neutrality? And if they did, that tells you everything you need to know. Because Black people, we need to stop looking to others to save us and speak for us. You need to save yourself and speak for yourself.
Well, with that said, shouldn't a guy like you who has billions of dollars, you should be giving to these Black organizations like the NAACP and the Urban League? So basically, you got them in your pocket instead of them being in the white man's pocket.
Yeah, I like the way you think. Look, the Urban League gave me the Whitney M. Young Jr. Award April 18th, my dad's birthday of this year. And I gave them $250,000. And I told them I will give you more, but we have to work together. Mm-hmm. I know Comcast gives the Urban League $1 million a year, and I know it's tough for them to wean themselves off of that crack. And I said, guys, I'm here to help. I'm happy to help replace that money, if not all of it. But sit with me and make sure you're doing the right thing. And there's plenty of folks. Black people, we're not poor. We have a lot of wealth in our community, and we're happy to lean in. And we're happy to finance our politicians so they can do the right thing, so they can speak up and speak out and protect our interests and make sure that we do get access to capital, make sure the banks are lending us money, make sure we are a part of that pension fund, $1 trillion pension fund, and making sure that our schools are strong and they are making sure that our kids are properly educated, and making sure that we do have a seat at the table at these major universities.
I know we keep harping on education, and I agree, but education is not going to stop racism.
No.
Because you're going through a racist situation right now.
No, but it helps to equalize it.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
When people are educated and they have money, it's tough to discriminate against them.
I think when a cop sees a Black person,
they still do it. It does not
treat you like a nigga regardless of what your financial status is or your education.
Absolutely. But you do have you have more resources, and you have greater resources to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have your whole entire network from the alumni and everybody from that school that you went to that you can tap into.
And what happens is a lot of people don't mess with people who can afford the best lawyers.
That's true. That's true. All that's true.
Right there. When you got money, when you have money and you can hire the best lawyers, people treat you with respect. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you want to have that education and you want to have resources, and it starts to level the playing field. And that's important. And what I say is, look, I have mad respect for a lot of people in our community. And I know most people in our community want the best for us. And I want to make sure we position ourselves for long-term success. And we do it now. And we have to be really vigilant about it. And, listen, I think, look, the gay community also is being challenged the day before on November 12th in the Supreme Court. And they're brilliant. They're out there on the streets and they're protesting. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying get out there and protest, and certainly, but make it be known that you're aware of this and you're not happy about it. Hey, Comcast, David Cohen, Brian Roberts. Hey, Tom Rutledge at Charter. Don't challenge our civil rights. That's not right. Mm-hmm. Let's sit down and let's figure it out. You have a voice. You have a lot of power. Also, you need to really talk to your representatives. Mm-hmm. When you have, 12 members of Congress that have leaned in and you have 47 sitting on the bench, you have to say, and why should we vote for you? And why should we give you money? You need to protect our civil rights.
Now, besides all that, with people, I just want one last question. With people that look like you and that came from similar situations as you,
yes.
How are you helping those individuals? Because a lot of times, we support, but a lot of times nobody necessarily is reaching a hand back to the areas that we came from and say, let me help you so I can give you a jump start, something that I didn't have.
I love it.
But you have the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And I do plenty of that. I mean, just sitting here and just speaking with the community and making sure, please understand, your civil rights are at stake. Mm-hmm. Your civil rights, right? A lot of folks wouldn't take the time. They just do what they do. There are plenty of folks out there that say, I'm rich, I got mine, get yours.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I'm not that person.
Clearly.
It's easy not to sit here. It's easy. I can go sit on a yacht in the south of France right now. Okay? And I know plenty of folks who are doing that. Mm-hmm. But I'm sitting here saying, we deserve better, we can be better, and we can do better. And here's how we come together. That's why I'm sitting here.
And you've been relatively quiet all of these years, so for you to be being vocal about this right now.
Yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm talking, I'm taking what Coretta Scott King taught me, and I'm saying, hey, folks, we got to deal with the fourth and final chapter. It's the reason I bought the griot. So it's 100% African-American owned. When you think about the Weather Channel being owned by an African-American, that is historic. Word. You basically have 4 news organizations in America.
I feel like we celebrated that up here when it happened.
Yo, thank you.
Yeah.
CNN owned by AT&T, MSNBC owned by Comcast, and Fox News owned by News Corp, and the Weather Channel owned by me. Mm-hmm. That in itself is, exceptional for us as a community. Buying Freestyle so we can go direct to the movie theaters. That's a first. The griot, so we can have a voice that's just, it can't be edited. It is about making sure that we have the truth, the absolute truth. And it's overarching, it's real simple. We just want to make sure all Americans have fair access, equal opportunity. All Americans, especially African Americans, the furthest left behind. And making sure that we work together with our gay brothers and sisters and our Hispanic brothers and sisters and Asian brothers and sisters, everybody, to make sure that if they're under siege, that they know we have their back. Because today it's them, tomorrow it's us.
All right. We appreciate you joining us.
We got another great black creator coming in, Will Packer. My final question, this is it. If what the internet says is true,
yes, sir,
and Bill Cosby got room for trying to buy NBC,
yes,
are you afraid what they may try to do to you?
Nah, man, like I said, you have to burn your knee pads. You can't live in fear, because fear is another form of slavery. And I left the plantation long ago.
Word.
And I'm not going back to the plantation. And, I made the decision long ago, I'd rather die on my feet than my knees. And don't live in fear. God's got me. God loves me. God put me here to do great things, and I will not let God down. Right. And when I finally go to heaven and God says to me, why did you help feed my hungry people? Why did you help educate my people that were not getting the education? Why did you help heal my sick children? Because I'm going to be real simple. God, you're my father, and I want you to be proud of me. And as long as I know you're in my life, no one can hurt me, and I am unstoppable.
Man, I don't know where to start, but once again, guys, pound for pound, I think this is one of the most informative interviews with a black entrepreneur I have ever listened to. So I'm going to give some brief commentary on some thoughts and takeaways from today's episode, and then I'm going to give you all of my social media contact information and resource guides before we close out. So there were so many things, guys, that actually stood out to me. The first thing I want to talk about is when he started talking about how he started his business in 1993 on his kitchen table, and he kept getting no after no after no. And one of the keys to success as an entrepreneur is that stick-to-itiveness. If you believe in what you're talking about in your business, you're going to keep sticking to it. Also, he talked about, going into possible foreclosure over 14 times, going through those trials and tribulations that sharpen you. And then once you get through those, guys, you get to a point now where you understand that it doesn't matter what happens to you in terms of business. You're going to be able to make a comeback. OK, you're going to get knocked down, but you'll know what to do in terms of coming back. It's just like a fighter that gets knocked down in a fight and recovers and then goes on to win the fight. If it happens one time, you know what to do the second time. Something else that really stood out to me is that based on our situation here in America, we are positioned to fail. OK, we're positioned to fail. Like you said, we were brought here to create and build wealth for others. It was never destined for us when they brought us here to be competing. So we were supposed to be an asset to them. But like you said, once freedom came, then we weren't an asset anymore. We were a liability. And so they had to deal with it. They're still dealing with us right now, looking at us as a liability. That's why economic empowerment is so important, guys. So when I talk about, black economic empowerment and building a black power base, economic power base, that's what it's all about. Because money rules the world. And you got to have money to affect different things. Not that you can't make a change without money, but to truly make an above board or across the board change, you're going to need resources. Okay. No revolution without economics, family. That's what it's all about. He also spoke about him dealing with Coretta Scott King and the 4 major challenges that we have. Number 1 was to end slavery. Number 2 was to end Jim Crow. Number 3 was achieve civil rights. And number 4, achieve economic inclusion. Okay. So as Martin Luther King, if you never listened to the speech, The Two Americas, definitely listen to that by Martin Luther King. And also the book Orders to Kill by William Pepper. I started reading that about a week or 2 weeks ago. It's a long book, but it's a very informative book. So those 4 things that Coretta Scott King told him: end slavery, end Jim Crow, achieve civil rights, and achieve economic inclusion. Something else that he said resonated with me too. He said, you got to get into the room, the schoolroom, the boardroom, and the courtroom. So we're not in the schoolroom because we're getting a bad education. We're not in the boardroom because we have no access to capital. And we're in the courtroom because we have laws that are made to basically lock us up. And so we understand we're positioned to fail. And he was banging that point home the whole way. Also, he talked about the 4 Ds. And this is what people do. This is war, family. Don't get it twisted. This is war. D number 1, dismiss. Number 2 is discredit. Number 3 is demonize. And number 4 is destroy. So if you dismiss somebody, then you discredit them, you demonize them, make them less than human, then it's easy to destroy. This is the same tactic that Adolf Hitler used, and he got that from slavery in America. Dismiss, discredit, demonize, and destroy. And the final takeaway I want to bring up is, he said, if you don't understand how you're positioned, then you're going to fail. So you have to understand the rules of the game. You have to know the game you're in. A lot of us don't realize that we're in a game. So recognize and understand where we are, how we're positioned, and what we need to do to improve our position. So once again, classroom, boardroom, courtroom. You said the battle is not in the streets, family. It's in the classroom, it's in the boardroom, and it's in the courtroom. I'm telling you guys, this is a great interview, not just for entrepreneurs, but for any young black man or woman to listen to. So if your kids are in entrepreneurship, even if they're not, to be quite honest, share this interview with them because it's a powerful interview. So he also said something real quick. Making money is easy. It's a mindset. Success begets success. So anything worthwhile is going to be a struggle, guys. So as entrepreneurs, we all know that it doesn't just happen overnight. And if you have that stick-to-itiveness and you understand the game like Byron Allen did, then you too can be successful. So when people look to get in business and they think that it's going to be automatic success, instant success without failures and setbacks, you're fooling yourself. Once again, guys, entrepreneurship is a full contact sport. All right. It's actually a profession. If you make money in entrepreneurship, then you're a professional entrepreneur. So it's nothing to be played with. You got to respect it. Before we close on out, family, I just want to share some of the resources with you and my contact information. My new book is out, A New Black Wall Street, Circulating the Black Dollar Worldwide by Building Successful E-Commerce Businesses. So if you're interested in building a successful, sustainable e-commerce business, go to anewblackwallstreet.com. Pick yourself up a copy. The digital edition is $9.95. The print edition is $14.95. Now, I recommend the digital edition because it's been updated and it also has a bonus fast start chapter. Now, if you need additional assistance building your successful, sustainable e-commerce business, I've created a compatible online course titled educatedecommerce.com. So go to educatedecommerce.com and you can enroll in the course. Now, this show is about Black economic empowerment and building a power base in the Black community. So in order to do that, family, we have to circulate dollars amongst ourselves. So I've created 2 platforms to help us do that. The first one is BeSmartByBlack.com. BeSmartByBlack.com. That site is for black product producers who want to sell their products to black consumers worldwide. It's free to upload your product information, so go to besmartbyblack.com. Now, if you are a freelancer and you do anything like on Fiverr or freelancer.com, I've created a platform for you titled hireblackfreelancers.com, HIRE blackfreelancers.com. Once again, it is free. So you can connect with black consumers and black businesses that are looking to hire black freelancers. Now, if you want me to come out to speak at a church, school, organization, university, or for my book tour, you can go to bookjjones.com, bookjjones.com, fill out the short form, and I will get right back to you. Now, I know this is a lot of information, and I'm about to give you my social media contact information, but you can go to BEB Connect, BEB, like Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, connect.com, and all of this information and resource links will be there. Now, if you need to connect with me for anything long, you can email me at jjones@blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. That's JAYJONES at blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. Facebook, connect with me on Facebook. Go there and just type in Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Twitter, you can hit me at jjones001, JAYJONES001. Instagram, jjones for real. That's JAYJONES, the number 4, REAL. YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, family. I have additional content that comes out on YouTube that is not on the show. Yes, my show does come out on YouTube, but I have additional content. So please go to YouTube and type in Black Entrepreneur Blueprint and subscribe to my channel. LinkedIn, if you want to connect with me via LinkedIn, go to LinkedIn and type in J Jones, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Connect with me there. If you want to be included in the BEB text line for notifications and reminders, text BEB to 555-888. BEB to 555-888. Also, once again, family, you can go to BEB Connect for all of my social media contact information and also my resource platforms, BEB Connect. Now, before I close out, family, I just want to say thank you once again. Each and every week, guys, we get more and more downloads, and that's attributed to you guys, the BEB family. So please continue to spread the word about the podcast and the blog. And I love you guys, and I will see you the same time next week. Peace.